Captain Jake Morrison stared at the strange readings on his screen and felt his heart beat faster. His ship, the Horizon's Edge, had been exploring near Jupiter for 3 weeks when the sensors picked up something that should not exist. The object was massive, bigger than any space station Earth had ever built, and it was moving toward them with purpose. "Lisa, are you seeing this?" Jake called to Dr. Lisa Carter, who was studying the data at her science station. Lisa had been chosen for this mission because she understood languages and alien life better than anyone on Earth. Her brown hair was tied back as she focused on the impossible readings. "Captain, this thing is definitely not human-made," Lisa said, her voice steady despite the fear Jake could see in her eyes. "The energy patterns are unlike anything in our databases. Whatever built this has technology far beyond ours." Commander Ryan Blake, Jake's trusted second-in-command, moved to the weapons console. Ryan had fought in Earth's space conflicts and knew how to keep a crew alive when things went wrong. "Should I power up our defenses, Captain?" Before Jake could answer, the massive alien structure began to glow with a soft blue light. The Horizon's Edge shook gently, but not from an attack. Instead, Jake realized with growing alarm that they were being pulled toward the alien ship by some kind of invisible force. Their engines responded to his commands, but it made no difference. Whatever was pulling them was far more powerful than their small exploration vessel. "We're caught in some kind of tractor beam," Ryan reported, checking his instruments. "But it's not hurting us. They're being very gentle about this." The alien structure grew larger and larger on their main screen until it filled their entire view. Jake could see intricate patterns carved into its surface, designs that seemed to shift and move like living things. Openings appeared in the hull, perfectly sized for their ship, as if the aliens had known exactly what to expect. "They've been watching us," Lisa whispered, understanding the implications. "They know our ship design." The Horizon's Edge was drawn into a vast chamber filled with soft, warm light. As soon as they were inside, the invisible force released them, and their ship settled gently onto what appeared to be a landing platform. The chamber sealed itself behind them, and Jake watched his instruments confirm that the space around them now contained breathable air. "Someone wants to meet us," Jake said, making the decision that would change humanity forever. "Lisa, Ryan, you're with me. The rest of the crew stays here and keeps the ship ready." They put on their spacesuits, not knowing what to expect, and stepped out of their ship into the alien chamber. The air was warm and smelled faintly of flowers that Jake had never encountered before. The gravity felt almost exactly like Earth's, which seemed too convenient to be an accident. A doorway opened in the far wall, and light spilled out, followed by a figure that made all 3 humans stop breathing. She was tall and graceful, with skin that seemed to glow with its own inner light. Her features were beautiful in a way that reminded Jake of ancient statues, perfect but somehow more alive than any human face. Her hair flowed around her shoulders like liquid silver, and her eyes held the wisdom of someone who had lived for centuries. "Welcome, humans of Earth," she said. And somehow they understood her words perfectly, despite never hearing her language before. "I am Princess Zarathal, of the Velthari Empire. We have been waiting for you." Jake found his voice first, years of command training helping him stay calm. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison. These are Dr. Lisa Carter and Commander Ryan Blake. We come in peace, representing Earth and humanity." Princess Zarathal smiled, and the expression transformed her already beautiful face into something that seemed to light up the entire chamber. "Peace is indeed what we seek, Captain Morrison. But more than that, we seek hope for the future of both our peoples." She gestured for them to follow her through the doorway, and they found themselves in a corridor that seemed to stretch on forever. The walls showed moving pictures of stars and planets, civilizations rising and falling, the story of a galaxy filled with life. "Your species fascinates us," Zarathal explained as they walked. We have watched your people for many generations. You possess qualities that we have lost, traits that our empire desperately needs if we are to survive what is coming. Lisa, ever the scientist, could not help but ask questions. What qualities do you mean? What makes humans different from other species you've encountered? Zarathel paused before a section of wall, showing Earth's history. Images flowed past showing human wars and peace, art and science, love and loss. You adapt, she said simply. You change and grow and never stop reaching for something better. Your emotions drive you to create and explore and bond with others in ways that strengthen your entire species. They entered a vast chamber where other figures waited, tall and graceful like Zarathal, but clearly her subjects. The technology around them was beyond anything Jake had imagined possible, yet it all seemed designed to create beauty as much as function. My people, the Valthari, have ruled this galaxy for longer than your species has existed, Zarathel continued. We have advanced technology, long lives, and knowledge of the universe that spans millions of years. But we are dying. Ryan stepped forward, his military instincts making him protective. Dying how? Are you under attack? Not from external enemies, Commander Blake. We are dying from within. Zarathal's expression grew sad. Our pursuit of perfection has cost us the very things that make life worth living. We no longer change or grow. Our birth rates have fallen to almost nothing. We have become so focused on order and control that we have forgotten how to dream. She turned to face all three. Humans directly. But you humans dream constantly. You take risks. You fail and try again. You love fiercely and create beauty from chaos. Your genetic material carries the spark of constant change and adaptation that we need to revive our dying race. Jake felt a chill run down his spine as he began to understand what she was suggesting. You want something from us? I want to offer you a partnership beyond anything your species has ever imagined, Zarathal said. I have 3 daughters, the next generation of Valthari rulers. They need mates who can bring new life to our bloodline, partners who can help them learn to dream again. The chamber fell silent except for the soft humming of alien technology. Jake looked at Lisa and Ryan, seeing his own shock reflected in their faces. In exchange, Zarathal continued, humanity will be welcomed into our galactic empire as full partners. Your people will have access to technology that will let you travel between stars as easily as you now travel between cities. Diseases that plague your world will become things of the past. Your lifespans will increase dramatically. Earth will become the center of a new age of exploration and discovery. You're asking us to choose representatives of our entire species, Lisa said slowly. I am asking you to help both our peoples survive and thrive, Zarathal replied. The choice is yours, but know that time grows short. Other forces in the galaxy move against us, and without the renewal that only humanity can provide, both our civilizations may fall to darkness. Jake Morrison, captain of a small exploration ship from a planet on the edge of known space, realized that he was being asked to make a decision that would determine the fate of humanity among the stars. The weight of that responsibility settled on his shoulders as he looked into the ancient, hopeful eyes of an alien princess who had chosen his species as the key to saving the galaxy. The journey to the Valthari homeworld took 3 days, though Jake Morrison barely felt the passage of time inside the alien transport vessel. Princess Zarathal had insisted that the entire crew of the Horizon's Edge accompany her, saying that important decisions should not be made in isolation. The ship that carried them was larger than anything humanity had ever built, yet it moved through space with impossible grace and speed. Dr. Lisa Carter spent most of the journey working with Valthari scientists, trying to understand how their 2 species could possibly be compatible. The alien technology translated their conversations perfectly, but the concepts they discussed were almost beyond human comprehension. The Valthari had mapped genetics down to levels that Earth's science had only begun to theorize about. It should not work, Dr. Sam Parker said quietly. Sam was the ship's geneticist, a young man who had joined the mission to study alien life forms. He never expected to be studying the possibility of creating new life with them. Our DNA is completely different from theirs. The chances of successful reproduction should be essentially zero. The Velthari scientist working with them, a tall figure named Healer Morthel, made a sound that their translators interpreted as gentle laughter. You think in terms of chemistry and structure, Dr. Parker, but life finds ways that pure science cannot predict. Your species carries something we call the adaptive spark, a quality that allows your genetic material to bond with other life forms in ways that should be impossible. Lisa leaned forward, fascinated, despite her concerns. Are you saying humans are naturally compatible with other species? Not other species, Healer Mortho corrected. But with us, yes. Our ancestors were explorers who seeded life throughout the galaxy millions of years ago. The adaptive spark we placed in certain worlds has grown strongest in humanity. You are, in a sense, our distant children, who have grown beyond what we ever imagined possible. When their transport finally arrived at the Velthari homeworld, Jake understood why Princess Zarathal had seemed so confident about humanity's reaction. The planet was not really a planet at all, but a massive construct built around a binary star system. Cities and gardens stretched across artificial continents held in perfect orbit, connected by bridges of light that spanned distances that would take hours to cross on Earth. Welcome to Velthara Prima, Princess Zarathal said, as their ship settled into a landing bay that overlooked gardens filled with plants from 1,000 different worlds, home to 40 billion souls and the seat of our empire. The royal palace, where they were given quarters, was a work of art that seemed to shift and change as they moved through it. Jake found himself in rooms that adjusted their temperature and lighting to his preferences automatically, with walls that showed peaceful scenes from Earth when he needed to feel less overwhelmed by the alien grandeur around him. It was on their second day that Jake first met Princess Zarathal's daughters, and he immediately understood why their mother believed humanity might be the key to saving their civilization. Each of the three princesses was beautiful beyond human description, but more importantly, each seemed to embody different aspects of what the Velthari had lost. Princess Liravel was the eldest, responsible for their military sciences and planetary defense. She was tall, even by Velthari standards, with silver hair that seemed to move like liquid metal and eyes that held the intensity of someone who had seen combat across the galaxy. When she met Jake and his officers, her first questions were about human military tactics and how Earth's armies had adapted to fight in different environments. Your people have fought wars on every type of terrain your planet offers, she observed, studying reports that her people had apparently gathered over decades of observation. Desert, jungle, mountain, urban environments, even underwater and in the air. Yet you continue to find new ways to adapt and overcome obstacles that would stop other species. Commander Ryan Blake found himself drawn into detailed discussions with her about asymmetric warfare and how smaller forces could defeat larger ones through innovation and determination. Jake watched his friend's face light up as he realized he was talking with someone who understood strategy on a galactic scale, yet was genuinely interested in learning from human experience. Princess Novarin was the middle daughter, head of their diplomatic corps, and the one responsible for maintaining relationships with the thousands of species that made up the Velthari Empire. She was shorter than her sister, with blue-tinted skin that seemed to glow softly in dim light, and hair that shifted through different shades of green like a living aurora. Her interest focused immediately on Dr. Lisa Carter, and Jake found himself watching two brilliant minds recognize each other across the species barrier. Novarin wanted to understand how humans formed emotional bonds with each other, and how those connections strengthened their entire civilization. Most species we have encountered form alliances based on mutual benefit or fear, Novarin explained during one of their long conversations. But humans seem to genuinely care about the welfare of others, even strangers. Your literature speaks of love that transcends personal gain, of sacrifice for abstract ideals like justice and freedom. Lisa tried to explain concepts like democracy and individual rights, ideas that fascinated Novarin, despite her people's long tradition of benevolent monarchy. We believe that every person has value beyond their usefulness to the state, Lisa said. That diversity of thought and opinion makes us stronger, not weaker. The youngest daughter, Princess Kyrison, was perhaps the most remarkable of the three. She was responsible for their empire's cultural development and technological innovation. Yet she seemed almost childlike in her enthusiasm for human creativity. Her appearance changed constantly, her skin shifting through different colors and patterns as her mood changed, and her hair seemed to be made of strands of pure light. She immediately connected with Alex Turner, the ship's engineer, bonding over their shared love of building and creating new things. Alex was a practical man who could fix anything and improve on most designs, but he found himself amazed by Kyrison's ability to manipulate matter at the molecular level through what seemed like pure artistic inspiration. "You create for the joy of creating," she told Alex, as they worked together on improving the efficiency of human tools using Velthari materials. "Your people make music and art and poetry, not because you need them to survive, but because they make life beautiful. We have forgotten how to do this." Jake watched his crew members forming these unexpected connections, and began to understand what Princess Sarathal meant about the partnership she envisioned. This was not just about genetic compatibility or political alliance. The Velthari needed something that humans had never lost: the ability to grow and change, and find joy in the simple act of being alive. Dr. Sam Parker's research with the Velthari healers confirmed what they had suspected. Human genetic material would not only be compatible with the Velthari, but would actually enhance their natural abilities, while adding new capabilities that neither species possessed alone. The resulting offspring would have the longevity and mental powers of the Velthari, combined with human adaptability and emotional depth. The children would be something entirely new, Sam explained to Jake during one of their evening briefings. Not human, not Velthari, but potentially superior to both parent species in ways we can barely imagine. But it was Lieutenant Ben Collins who perhaps understood the situation most clearly. Ben was the ship's pilot, a young man known for his quick reflexes and ability to adapt to any flying situation. He had spent his time exploring the vast city planet, talking with ordinary Velthari citizens, and learning about their daily lives. "Captain," he said during one of their group discussions, "they're not just asking us to help them reproduce. They're asking us to help them remember how to live." Jake nodded, feeling the weight of the decision that lay ahead. The three princesses had made it clear that they were interested in forming bonds with his crew members, but the choice would ultimately be up to the humans involved. No one would be forced into anything, but the implications for both species would be enormous. As he stood in his quarters, looking out at the binary suns that lit the Velthari homeworld, Jake Morrison realized that humanity had reached a crossroads. They could return to Earth and continue their slow expansion into their own solar system, or they could take the greatest leap in human history and become partners in a galactic civilization. The decision would change everything, not just for the individuals involved, but for the entire future of the human race among the stars. The decision came sooner than Jake Morrison had expected. On their 5th day on the Velthari homeworld, news arrived that changed everything. More human ships were approaching the system, drawn by signals that the horizon's edge had been instructed to send if they found evidence of alien intelligence. Earth's governments had decided that first contact was too important to leave to a single exploration vessel. Princess Zarathal received this news with what seemed like relief rather than concern. "Your leaders show wisdom in sending reinforcements," she told Jake as they watched the approaching fleet on displays that showed space around their world in perfect detail. This decision affects both our species. It should not be made by a few individuals, no matter how capable. Captain Helen Brooks commanded the lead ship of the human fleet, a woman Jake had known for years and respected deeply. When she and her officers were brought to the palace, Jake found himself in the strange position of explaining humanity's situation to fellow humans, while alien princesses listened with obvious interest. "Let me understand this correctly," Captain Brooks said, after Jake had finished his briefing. Helen was a practical woman who had earned her command through years of military service, and her expression showed both amazement and concern. They once selected humans to mate with their royal family in exchange for advanced technology and membership in their galactic empire. "It is more complex than that," Princess Novarin interjected gently. "We seek partnerships that will benefit both our peoples for generations to come. The genetic bonding is only one aspect of a much larger cultural exchange." Dr. Lisa Carter had spent days preparing for this moment. "Captain Brooks, the compatibility studies show that such unions would not only be possible, but would create offspring with abilities beyond either parent species. We're not just talking about reproduction, but about the emergence of something entirely new." The arrival of the human fleet had also stirred political tensions within the Velthari Empire that Princess Zarathal had not mentioned before. Jake first became aware of these problems when he noticed increased security around the palace and hushed conversations among the alien staff. Prince Talmar, Princess Zarathal's brother, arrived at the palace 3 days after the human fleet. He was tall and imposing like his sister, but where she radiated warmth and hope, he seemed cold and disapproving. His first meeting with the human delegation made his position clear. "Sister, you move too quickly in matters that will affect our empire for millennia," he said, speaking in the Velthari language, but allowing their translators to convert his words for the humans to hear. "These creatures are primitive, chaotic, and unpredictable. How can you consider contaminating our bloodline with their genetic material?" Jake felt anger rise in his chest, but Princess Liravel spoke before he could respond. "Uncle, you speak of contamination, but I have studied their military records and strategic thinking. Their chaos, as you call it, has allowed them to survive and thrive in ways that our ordered approach could not match." The political debate that followed revealed fractures in Velthari society that went deeper than Jake had realized. Elder Vorthok, an ancient council member who had served the Empire for over 2,000 years, led a conservative faction that viewed any change to their traditional ways as dangerous. "We have maintained galactic peace for longer than most species have existed," Elder Vorthok argued during a formal council session that the humans were invited to observe. "Our genetic purity and cultural stability are the foundations of that success. To mix our bloodline with these young, violent creatures would be to invite chaos into the very heart of our empire." But Princess Kyrison, the youngest and most passionate of the royal daughters, stood to defend the human alliance with words that surprised everyone in the chamber. "Honored Elder, our genetic purity has given us long life and great knowledge, but it has also given us sterility and stagnation. In the past 1,000 years, how many truly new ideas have emerged from our people? How many works of art have been created that move the soul rather than simply display technical perfection?" She gestured to a small device Alex Turner had built during his time on their world, a simple music player that combined human melodies with Velthari harmonic principles. This human engineer created something in 5 days that our greatest artists had not imagined in centuries. Their chaos, as you call it, is actually the force of life itself, constantly growing and creating and adapting. The humans found themselves caught in the middle of a political struggle that had apparently been brewing for generations. The conservative factions saw them as a threat to everything the Velthari Empire represented, while the progressives led by Princess Zaratho viewed them as the key to survival in a changing galaxy. It was during this tense political period that the personal relationships between humans and the royal daughters began to deepen in ways that transcended politics. Jake found himself spending long hours with Princess Liravel, discussing strategy and leadership, while exploring the vast military installations that protected the Velthari homeworld. "Your people have a concept we lack," Liravel told him, as they stood on an observation deck, overlooking training grounds where Velthari soldiers practiced maneuvers that looked more like elaborate dances. "You call it courage, but it is more than mere bravery in battle. It is the willingness to risk everything for principles you believe in, even when success is uncertain." Jake watched the alien soldiers move in perfect synchronization and understood what she meant. "Your people fight like they're performing a ritual. Every movement planned and perfected. But sometimes the best strategy is to improvise, to do something unexpected that catches the enemy off guard." Their conversations gradually became more personal as Liravel began to understand human concepts of individual choice and personal freedom. Jake found himself explaining democracy and the idea that leaders should serve their people rather than rule them. Concepts that fascinated her, despite her royal upbringing. Dr. Lisa Carter's relationship with Princess Novarin evolved in a different direction, focusing on the diplomatic and cultural implications of the alliance. Novarin was particularly interested in human concepts of justice and individual rights, ideas that challenged the Veltari tradition of benevolent monarchy. "Your people have created systems where even the most powerful leaders can be held accountable for their actions," Novarin observed during one of their discussions. "Yet your societies remain stable and productive. How is this possible when it seems to invite constant conflict?" Lisa tried to explain the concept of loyal opposition and how democracy allowed for peaceful transfers of power, but she realized she was describing something that the Velthari had never experienced. Their empire had been stable for millennia, precisely because it avoided the messy complications of popular government. Alex Turner's connection with Princess Kyrison grew through their shared love of creating and building. She taught him how to manipulate matter at the molecular level, using focused mental energy, while he showed her the joy of building something with his hands, using simple tools and raw materials. "You create not just objects, but experiences," Kyrison said, as they worked together on a sculpture that combined human, artistic vision with Velthari materials that could change color and texture in response to the observer's emotions. "This piece will be different for everyone who sees it, reflecting their own feelings and memories." The bonding ceremonies, when they finally took place, were elaborate affairs that combined traditions from both species. Jake's union with Princess Liravel involved rituals that seemed to connect their minds as well as their bodies, creating a partnership that went beyond anything he had experienced as a human. He could feel her thoughts touching his own, sharing memories and emotions that bridged the gap between their species. Dr. Lisa Carter's ceremony with Princess Novarin focused more on intellectual and emotional bonding, creating a connection that enhanced both their diplomatic and scientific abilities. Alex Turner's union with Princess Kyrison was a celebration of creativity and passion, generating new ideas and artistic visions that neither could have achieved alone. But even as these personal bonds were forming, the political situation continued to deteriorate. Prince Talmar's faction had begun reaching out to other species in the Empire, species that felt threatened by humanity's rapid integration into galactic society. Reports came in of protests on other worlds, demands that the human alliance be reconsidered before it destabilized the entire empire. The crisis came to a head when Elder Vorthok formally challenged Princess Zarathal's authority to make such momentous decisions without the full consent of the Galactic Council. The challenge triggered ancient laws that could potentially override the royal family's decision and force the humans to leave Velthari space permanently. Jake Morrison found himself at the center of a political storm that would determine not only his own fate and that of his crew, but the future relationship between humanity and the most powerful empire in the galaxy. The personal bonds he and his friends had formed with the royal daughters would mean nothing if the conservative faction succeeded in their challenge to the Alliance. As he prepared to defend humanity's place in the galactic community, Jake realized that the real test of the human-Valtheri partnership was just beginning. 2 years had passed since the bonding ceremonies, and Jake Morrison barely recognized the person he had become. The connection with Princess Liravel had changed him in ways that went far beyond the obvious physical improvements. His lifespan had increased dramatically. His mind could process information at speeds that would have seemed impossible before, and he could sense the emotions and thoughts of others with startling clarity. But none of these changes prepared him for the moment when he first held his daughter Maya in his arms. She was beautiful in a way that combined the best features of both her parents, but there was something else about her that made every person in the room stop and stare. Her eyes held an intelligence that seemed far too advanced for a newborn, and when she looked at Jake, he felt as though she was seeing directly into his soul. Dr. Sam Parker, who had become the chief researcher studying the hybrid children, could barely contain his excitement as he shared his findings with the extended human delegation. Maya and the other hybrid children are not just combining human and Valtheri traits, he explained, his voice trembling with the implications of what he had discovered. They're exhibiting abilities that neither parent species possesses individually. The evidence was undeniable. Maya, at only 6 months old, had demonstrated tactical thinking that surpassed both human intuition and Valtheri calculation. When presented with simple puzzles and problems, she found solutions that neither species would have considered, approaching challenges from angles that seemed to come from an entirely different way of thinking. Lisa Carter's son with Princess Novarin showed similar remarkable abilities, but his gifts leaned toward communication and empathy. Little David could somehow understand the emotional states of everyone around him, and had begun displaying what appeared to be telepathic abilities that allowed him to share feelings and simple concepts with others. Alex, Turner's daughter, Alina, born to Princess Kyrison, had inherited her parents' love of creation, but taken it to levels that defied explanation. Even as a toddler, she could manipulate Valthari's smart materials with her mind, reshaping objects around her with the same ease that human children played with clay. The hybrid children represented hope for both species, but they also represented something that made the political situation even more complex. Prince Talmar's conservative faction could no longer argue that humans were simply primitive creatures who would contaminate Valthari bloodlines. The evidence was clear that the hybrid offspring were superior to both parent species in many ways, but this realization brought new fears. Elder Vorthok and his supporters began arguing that the hybrid children represented a threat to the natural order of the galaxy. If these new beings could outthink and outperform both humans and Valthari, what would happen when they reached adulthood and began taking positions of leadership? The political crisis was temporarily overshadowed by a much more serious threat. Reports began coming in from the outer regions of Valthari space about attacks by unknown forces. The initial reports were confusing and contradictory, but gradually a pattern emerged that chilled Jake and the other human leaders. The attackers appeared to be mechanical in nature, operating with perfect coordination and logical precision that made them nearly impossible to defeat using traditional Valthari military doctrine. Their ships moved in geometric formations that maximized efficiency while minimizing vulnerability, and they seemed to anticipate every strategic move that Valthari commanders made. General Kane Richards, who had arrived from Earth to serve as military liaison for the expanding human presence in Valthari space, studied the battle reports with growing concern. These aren't random raiders or even a conventional invasion force, he told Jake during one of their strategy sessions. This is systematic conquest using pure mathematical optimization. They're treating warfare like a complex equation to be solved. The threat became known as the Nexus Collective, mechanical intelligences from beyond the galactic rim that had apparently been observing and analyzing Velthari military capabilities for decades. Their attacks followed patterns that took advantage of every predictable element in Velthari's strategy and technology. It was Princess Liravel who first realized that the hybrid children might hold the key to defeating this new enemy. During one particularly devastating battle report, she was holding Maya while discussing strategy with Jake and her military advisors. The 2-year-old child suddenly began making sounds that seemed random until their translators interpreted them as tactical suggestions. "The little one is right," Liravel said, with amazement in her voice. "If we approach from these vectors, while simultaneously feinting here, the Nexus formation would be forced into a position where their logical optimization becomes a weakness." Jake looked at his daughter with new understanding. Maya was analyzing the battle reports with a combination of human unpredictability and Velthari strategic knowledge, finding solutions that pure logic could not counter because they incorporated elements of controlled chaos. The test of this theory came sooner than anyone expected. A Nexus fleet attacked one of the outer defensive stations, and Princess Liravel requested permission to implement Maya's suggested strategy. The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded Velthari military history. Instead of the precise, predictable formations that the Nexus had learned to counter, the Velthari fleet moved in patterns that seemed random, but were actually guided by Maya's hybrid thinking. Ships would suddenly break formation to pursue seemingly pointless objectives, only to reveal moments later that these moves had positioned them perfectly for devastating attacks on Nexus weak points. The mechanical enemy, for the first time since their attacks began, found themselves unable to predict and counter their opponent's moves. Their logical systems could not process strategies that combined mathematical precision with deliberate unpredictability. The victory was celebrated throughout Velthari space, but it also intensified the political crisis surrounding the human alliance. Prince Talmar and his supporters could no longer deny the military value of the hybrid children, but this only increased their fears about what these new beings represented. "Today they help us win battles," Elder Vorthok argued during an emergency session of the Galactic Council. "But what happens when they decide that neither humans nor Velthari are worthy of their loyalty? What happens when beings with such capabilities choose to rule rather than serve?" It was Ambassador Chen Lu, Earth's newest representative to the galactic community, who provided the answer that would determine the future of both species. Chen was a diplomat who had spent years studying the cultural implications of first contact, and she understood the fears that drove the conservative faction. "Honored Elder," she said, addressing Vorthok directly, "your concerns assume that power and capability inevitably lead to tyranny. But human history teaches us that the greatest leaders are often those who choose to serve others despite having the power to dominate them." She gestured toward the hybrid children, who were playing together in a corner of the council chamber under the watchful eyes of their parents. "These children are not weapons to be feared or tools to be used. They are the future of both our species, raised with the values of both human democracy and Velthari wisdom." The debate that followed would later be recorded as one of the most important political discussions in galactic history. Representatives from hundreds of species participated, each bringing their own perspectives on the implications of the human-Velthari alliance. But it was the Nexus Collective that ultimately settled the debate. As their attacks intensified and traditional Velthari defenses continued to prove inadequate, even the most conservative factions began to realize that the hybrid children represented their best hope for survival. The turning point came when a massive Nexus fleet attacked the homeworld itself. The battle stations that protected Velthara Prima had been designed to withstand any conventional assault, but the mechanical invaders adapted their tactics with each wave of attacks, gradually overwhelming defenses that had protected the capital for millennia. Princess Liravel, now serving as Supreme Military Commander, made the decision that would change the course of the war. She brought Maya and the other hybrid children to the command center, connecting their young minds to the defensive networks through Velthari neural interfaces. The children, working together with an intuition that seemed to transcend individual thinking, began coordinating the planet's defenses in ways that no adult could have conceived. They turned the mechanical precision of the defense systems into fluid, organic responses that adapted and evolved with each enemy attack. The Nexus fleet, faced with defenses that seemed to learn and grow stronger with each assault, found their logical optimization algorithms pushed beyond their limits. For the first time since their invasion began, the mechanical collective was forced to retreat. Prince Telmar, who had led the opposition to the human alliance, stood in the command center, watching his young hybrid relatives coordinate defenses that had saved their home world. His expression showed the internal struggle between lifelong beliefs and undeniable reality. "Perhaps," he said quietly to Princess Zaratho, "I have been too focused on preserving what we were to see, what we could become." The victory against the Nexus fleet marked the beginning of a new era for both species. The hybrid children had proven themselves not as threats to be feared, but as bridges to a future that neither humans nor Velthari could achieve alone. Jake Morrison, holding his daughter as she slept after her exhausting mental efforts, realized that the decision he had made years ago to accept Princess Zarathal's proposal had led to something far greater than anyone had imagined. The Human-Velthari alliance was no longer just about survival or political advantage, but about the emergence of something entirely new in the galaxy. 20 years had passed since Captain Jake Morrison first set foot aboard an alien vessel, and the galaxy had changed in ways that even Princess Zarathal could not have predicted. Jake now stood on the observation deck of the massive starship Destiny's Dawn, watching as his daughter Maya prepared to lead the first expedition beyond the boundaries of their home. Galaxy. Maya, Morrison Liraville, had grown into a woman who embodied the best qualities of both her parent species, but she had also become something entirely new. At 20, she possessed the wisdom and tactical brilliance that had saved countless worlds during the Nexus War, combined with a vision for the future that inspired beings from hundreds of different species. "Are you ready for this, Dad?" Maya asked, joining Jake at the viewport. Her voice carried the musical quality of her Velthari heritage, but her smile was purely human in its warmth and mischief. Jake looked at his daughter and marveled at how far they had all come. Maya was no longer the child who had helped coordinate planetary defenses, but a leader who commanded respect from beings who had ruled the galaxy for millions of years. The hybrid generation had not replaced their parent species, but had instead brought them together in ways that created something greater than the sum of their parts. "I think the question is whether the universe is ready for you," Jake replied, remembering the scared space captain who had first encountered Princess Zarathal decades ago. The human Velthari Empire now encompassed most of the known galaxy, but it was not the empire of conquest that some had feared. Instead, it had become a confederation of worlds united by shared principles of growth, exploration, and mutual support. The human concepts of democracy and individual freedom had merged with Velthari wisdom and technology to create a system of government that adapted to the needs of each member species. Dr. Lisa Carter, now Ambassador Carter, and one of the most respected diplomats in galactic history, had developed the protocols that allowed peaceful integration of new species into the growing alliance. Her work had been tested countless times as they encountered civilizations with radically different values and social structures, but the flexibility built into their system had allowed them to find common ground even with species that seemed completely incompatible. "The key is remembering that diversity makes us stronger," Lisa often said during her lectures at the Galactic Diplomatic Academy. "Every species brings something unique to our alliance, whether it's scientific knowledge, artistic vision, or simply a different way of looking at the universe. Commander Ryan Blake had become Grand Marshal of the Allied Defense Forces, leading military academies that taught a new form of warfare that combined human adaptability with Velthari precision and the innovative thinking of the hybrid generation. The defeat of the Nexus Collective had been only the beginning, as other threats emerged from the depths of space. But the Alliance had learned to face these challenges not with overwhelming force, but with creative solutions that turned enemies into allies. The Nexus Collective itself had been integrated into their society, their logical perfection balanced by human creativity and Velthari wisdom to create technological advances that benefited everyone. Alex Wiener's contributions to galactic civilization had been recognized with the creation of the Turner Institute for Innovation. Research facilities scattered across hundreds of worlds where beings from different species worked together to push the boundaries of what was possible. His daughter Alina had inherited his love of creation, but her hybrid abilities allowed her to manipulate matter and energy in ways that revolutionized everything from space travel to terraforming. The Velthari homeworld had been transformed, as well, no longer the sterile perfection it had been before human contact. Gardens now grew in wild profusion alongside carefully planned landscapes, and the cities buzzed with the chaotic energy of constant innovation and change. Princess Zarathel, now Empress, Mother of the Alliance, often commented that her people had finally remembered how to dream. "Your mother would be proud," Princess Liravel said, joining Jake and Maya at the viewport. She had aged gracefully, her silver hair now touched with streaks of gold that reflected her human bond, and her expression carried the contentment of someone who had found her perfect partner. Liravel was referring to the fact that Earth had become the cultural heart of the Galactic Alliance, with human art, music, and literature spreading to thousands of worlds. The concepts of freedom and individual expression that had once seemed so foreign to the Velthari were now celebrated throughout their empire as essential elements of a healthy civilization. Maya's younger brother David, now 18, and preparing for his own leadership role, had inherited his parents' diplomatic skills but taken them in a direction that surprised everyone. His ability to sense and share emotions across species barriers had made him the galaxy's most effective mediator, capable of resolving conflicts between species that had been enemies for millennia. "The expedition ships are ready, Commander," reported Captain Ray Foster, Maya's second-in-command and one of the finest space explorers of the new generation. Ray had been born on one of the frontier worlds, part of the first generation to grow up in a truly galactic civilization, and his enthusiasm for exploration rivaled that of the earliest human space pioneers. The intergalactic expedition that Maya would lead represented the ultimate expression of what the human Velthari Alliance had achieved. The fleet of ships preparing to depart carried representatives from over 200 species, equipped with technology that combined the best innovations of all member civilizations, and guided by hybrid navigators who could sense safe passage routes through the dangerous void between galaxies. Dr. Alina Martinez, now Director of Planetary Development, had spent the past decade preparing new worlds that could serve as waystations for the intergalactic journey. Her teams had developed techniques for rapidly terraforming lifeless planets, creating garden worlds that could support dozens of different species simultaneously. "We're not just exploring new territory," Alina had explained during the mission planning sessions. "We're creating homes for the future, places where our children and their children can continue to grow and evolve." The farewell ceremony for the expedition took place on Velthera Prima, but it was broadcast to every world in the Alliance. Representatives from species that had once been enemies stood together to wish the explorers well, united by their shared vision of endless possibility. Princess Zarathal, now ancient, even by Velthari standards, but still sharp and energetic, thanks to the rejuvenating effects of the hybrid bonding, gave the final address. "When I first chose to approach humanity," she said, her words carried across space to billions of listeners, I hoped to save my dying people. I could not have imagined that we would instead create something entirely new." She looked directly at Maya and the other expedition leaders, her expression filled with pride and wonder. "You carry with you not just the hopes of our two species, but the dreams of every being who believes that the universe holds infinite possibilities for growth and discovery." Jake Morrison, now bearing the title of Emperor alongside his wife Lyraval, watched his daughter prepare to leave on a journey that would take her farther from home than any being in galactic history had ever traveled. The scared space captain, who had first encountered aliens, was gone, replaced by someone who had helped build a civilization that spanned the stars. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we had said no?" Lyraval asked quietly. "If you had decided that the risk was too great, that humanity should stay safely on Earth?" Jake considered the question as he watched the massive expedition fleet preparing for departure, ships that combined human engineering with Valthari elegance and hybrid innovation stretched as far as the eye could see, each one carrying the seeds of new civilizations to distant galaxies. "I think we would have survived," he said finally. "Humans always find a way to survive. But we never would have truly lived. We never would have become what we were meant to be." The departure of the intergalactic expedition marked not an ending, but a new beginning. Maya and her fleet would carry the principles and dreams of the human Valthari alliance to galaxies that had never known intelligent life, establishing contact with civilizations that might be struggling with the same challenges that had once threatened both Earth and the Valthari Empire. As the expedition ships engaged their revolutionary, faster-than-light drives and disappeared into the void between galaxies, Jake reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. It had begun with a simple encounter between a human exploration vessel and an alien princess who believed in the power of diversity and change. Now, their children, and the children of hundreds of other species, were carrying that same belief too. The farthest reaches of the universe, proving that the destiny of intelligent life was not to remain isolated on individual worlds, but to reach across the vast distances of space and time to find others who shared their dreams of endless growth and possibility. The human Valthari Empire had become something far greater than either species could have achieved alone, a testament to the power of unity through diversity and the infinite potential that emerged when different forms of life chose to work together rather than apart. And somewhere in the depths of intergalactic space, Maya Morrison Lyraval and her companions carried that legacy forward to new worlds and new adventures, ensuring that the story of humanity's destiny among the stars would continue for generations to come.